We need just battery. Yeah, I should be good.
Welcome, welcome, welcome to the working that is Krononaut Chronicles. My name is Bill, and I will be your guide on this particular Sonic adventure. The show is, of course, sponsored by mysticalwares.com. Derek is not here with us this evening, but I am joined by two other Chrononauts, and we'll hear from them in just a moment. But firstly, I wanted to go over what it is exactly that we do here on Chrononaut Chronicles. Well, since this is a working, there are steps to the working, and so we've made the steps into the show segments essentially. And there's four steps, there's four segments: the Almanac, Gratitude, Silver, and the Sword segment. The Almanac segment. The goal here is just to expand our awareness a little bit. We take a look at the upcoming energies that are available for us to work with throughout the week as far as planets go. And then gratitude, the gratitude segment, the second segment, since this is a working, love is a key ingredient to this particular working. So, and the gratitude segment helps us to tie our hearts and our minds together and to create that coherence, and to not only do this on the show once a week, right, but to kind of perpetuate it throughout throughout the week, right, in between our meetings. And then the silver segment, the goal here is expansion, really. We talk about many different topics, but hopefully learning something new each time. And then the sword segment is really about transformation. It is about spirit. It is about dimensions, consciousness, metaphysics, timelines, and how to effectively and efficiently navigate using our thoughts and reminding ourselves to move out of a victim mentality if we find ourselves in one of those and into the hero mindset. So that is the inspirational, motivational aspect of the show, is the step number 4, which is the last one. And I failed to look at the almanac and write what was happening this week. So let me grab it real quick. And I'm just going to do this on the fly. Today is the 23rd. Let's see. St. James of Jerusalem feast day is today. Don't know too much about that guy. Let's see. We've got a conjunction between Saturn and the moon on Tuesday. Wednesday, a conjunction between Neptune and the moon. And, ooh, we got a full moon on Saturday. Look out for that. There's also an eclipse, lunar eclipse on Saturday. It is the full hunter's moon, it says. And then Sunday, ooh, we've got a lot going on. Sunday, we've got 3 conjunctions. What is that? Mercury and Venus, the moon and Jupiter, and moon and Uranus, I believe that one is. So a lot happening this week. But speaking of eclipses, um, did you guys get to do any eclipse chasing? Not that
No, not for this one. I did go to the last one that crossed over the Carolinas.
I don't know.
Yes.
Yeah, I was not in the path. I do. I mean, it got dark here, obviously, but that guy, did you get to see any eclipse
Yeah,
action?
I didn't. We were in the path, but it was overcast here, so
Yeah, it was cloudy here too.
no joy for us.
So, yeah, that's the almanac segment, and then we just introduced our 2 chrononauts. We have special guest chrononaut, that guy with us for his second appearance on the show, actually. Uh,
Waving.
yeah, the first one we talked about this and on the uh, the next episode we recorded after we tried to get one with that guy, and Derek was here, and man, we had a lot of people on that episode, and we talked about black goo, and nobody recorded the episode. Actually, I did have a 3-second sound clip of. Do I still have it? I do still have it.
Oh boy. The evil that men do lives after them.
This is the only audio salvaged from. Oh no, I don't know if this is. Windows Media Player might not be compatible with Zoom. So,
Oh shit!
yeah. Did you hear that? Yeah.
That was it.
Yep. That was our episode. But yeah, so that was a weird conundrum. We had three fairly seasoned podcasters in the chat, and we all failed to record. So must have been the Black Goo topic, I think. And we will touch back on that. I'm gonna wait until Derek is here, obviously, because he's got the best story and firsthand experience when it comes with this stuff. But
Ooh.
yeah, we will probably hopefully hear from him maybe in November, if not definitely, well, hopefully for sure in December. But yeah, we'll see. Gratitude segment. Man, it's been 2 weeks since we had our last episode, so there's been a few things I'm grateful for. One of them is heat. Is cold now here, so I'm grateful that we have heat. I'm also grateful that we're not hooked up to. I didn't agree with this decision to begin with, or starting out, but we don't have natural gas. We are not on the grid, so we heat our house with diesel fuel oil. So it's a little different, a little bit more pricey, but at least we don't have to worry about our house blowing up, right? Anyway. Oh yeah, and I did. I started my workout routine again. I stopped in not July, in April of this year, and took the summer off and some part of the fall, and I overdid it it was last Wednesday. So it's been 6 days, still kind of sore, but I think I'll be in good shape for tomorrow. But anyway, that's my two gratitudes, I guess. That guy or Adam, do you, first of all, thank you both for being here. And what are you guys grateful for?
I am very grateful for the calm and introspection and retrospection that comes from advancing age. I've had a few things happen recently that would have sent me into a tailspin earlier in my days, and I'm grateful that hasn't happened this time. I credit the creator and the love of my family for that.
My dad often says that it's not getting older that sucks. It's the aging process. It's the
yeah. The physical aspect of it is kind of a pain in the neck, but I like the mentally and spiritually stronger part of it.
Yeah, you're in Jewish tradition, I've heard that one is not supposed to start studying the Torah, at least numerologically. This is I'm going back years and years on a book I read, but I think you're supposed to wait until you're 40 before you start doing that. So there's got to be something to having life experience and whatnot. And I'm getting to almost that number, but not quite. Adam, anyway, not enough about my age. Not to say, yeah. Adam, what are you grateful for?
Yeah, I'm glad that we're not in World War III right now.
Amen, brother.
That as crazy as things are, it seems that the powers that be are not letting it get completely out of hand just yet.
It has
been very thankful for that.
Yeah. It's just been that's the news cycle now. And I'm kind of glad we didn't have a show last week, because I was really struggling for headlines that didn't have to do with this conflict. Not that I'm
not gonna lie, I spent a fair amount of time on YouTube watching live streams over the Gaza horizon. I got trapped.
It's really easy to get trapped in that kind of stuff. I have been let's see, I'm going to blow my own cover on something here. I've been 4chan sober for 3.5 weeks now, and I'm very grateful for that.
Congratulations.
Yeah, it was it's interesting. I had convinced myself at one point that it was um, a valuable source of intel and insight, and that all I had to do was wade through some of the random bullshit that happens there, and just the more I looked at it, the less and less value I was able to extract from it. And so finally, I just said, that's enough.
Yeah, and to be fair, 4chan has seen its better days when it comes to that type of information leak. I mean, it was
True.
originally used because it was such a cesspool of information that you could leak some real information.
Yeah. Yeah.
But now it's kind of co-opted by everybody to do that.
Yeah, there are still a few personalities on there that seem to be engaged in things, but the chaos that happens around them is such that it's just it's unusable. I find it unusable.
Well, this is actually a really good segue into the third segment, the silver segment, where we learn something new. But before we get into the headlines I pick out, I'm trying to open up the room, or trying to remember to open up the room to anybody that wants to talk about any topics that they bring to the table. And that guy and I and Adam had a brief discussion beforehand, and I think that that guy has a particular how do you want to say method that he would like to explore with us. So why don't you kind of tell us what's on your mind?
Yeah, I mean, we see enough on the news, and the news is kind of a fire hose at this stage, where everybody has an opinion. We're being told who the good guys and the bad guys are, and I'm not entirely convinced that the people that are selling us commercial news are presenting that information from a pure heart. I think there's some other things that are going on there that are maybe they're being influenced in ways that we don't necessarily see. And if we had seen some of that influence, that it might change our opinion of both the news outlet and the news itself that was coming out. So I started looking at it, and I was looking at initially it was about Ukraine and Russia, and how everybody, not everybody in the U.S., but most of the news media and people that you run into on the street, everybody, I stand with Ukraine and all that. And I started to, I was initially suspicious about it. And I'm not going to make any kind of assessments or judgments on anybody else's, opinions or the outcomes of their own investigations and so on. I'm curious how you guys look at that conflict and figure out who's the good guy, or is there a good guy, and what tells you that, what convinces you that somebody is a good guy or a bad guy in that, and involved in that conflict. I'll just throw it out there for you.
Yeah, I look at especially when it comes to world politics, there is no good guys. As far as I'm concerned, what happened to the Nazis, Project Paperclip, they got absorbed into our government, into our nation, and we've continued to do some pretty terrible, horrible things in a world with other terrible, horrible people. To take the classic example, there's Iraq. We go in there under false pretenses, and we take out a guy who did some really horrible things. And in its wake, we left terrible destruction that impacted more people than to begin with. And I mean, when you just start looking at the way that the politics are done, it's power, control, and money. Now, how do I suss through? I take that as a baseline. There are no good guys. Like I'm on team human being, and not team America, Russia per se. But within that, obviously, there's right, wrong, and you need to have your sovereignty and your protection. The first thing I do is I listen to the No Agenda Show podcast. which does a really good job of deconstructing what's in the mainstream narrative. And more importantly, they take a very wide berth of the MSM and what they're putting out, which gives you a good idea on where a lot of the obfuscation is coming from. Secondly, I pay attention to NTD, New Tang Dynasty News. Nobody wants to do that. Nobody wants to watch like RT, the Russian Times, but that's where you're going to find a lot of the really true news about us, because they want to lambaste, the US, and they're going to do it as, cutthroat as possible. So those are my two big things. And the third one is just don't take the world too seriously. At least when it comes from a stress standpoint, I look at the world as being this the best movie ever, in a sense of the word, that like you couldn't write this script, you couldn't have turned it into Hollywood and got somebody to greenlight it. If you did, it would be The Running Man, which seems like it's not even farcical today that could happen. And the movie has a totally different tone when you watch it again.
I completely agree. Mrs. That Guy and I watched it, and it was impressive in how closely it aligns to what we're doing right now.
Oh yeah. Movie opens up with a guy wanting to save protesters, and he's being ordered to shoot and kill them, and then they fire missiles upon him and blame the attack on him, and then put him onto a TV show to compete against Jesse Ventura. It's totally what's happening today.
I'm hoping Biden ends up going up against Jesse Ventura.
Can he really go up against anybody else?
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, so the thing about not taking it too seriously, this is the thing that, and I'm grateful. I'm going to hitch back to the gratitude section for a second. I'm grateful that Mrs. That Guy continually reminds me of, is there anything that you can do about this? And if not, why are you bothering yourself with it? So,
yeah, bringing it back to the old circle of concern and the circle of influence idea.
Yeah.
But
yeah. And the other thing I do is I live in a pretty chaotic part of West Palm Beach, and that chaos is something that I truly love and adore. Because when you hear about, years ago when, Antifa was attacking people, or somebody would get attacked for wearing, a political hat, a Trump hat, or just anything like that, that does not happen down here. We are so diverse, so eclectic, so many different gangs and different things going on that like that kind of chaos just can't happen, because somebody will check you back. And, it's really interesting how living in that kind of like a chaotic social environment is actually inoculating against some of the crazier extremes around you.
Yeah, that's the same kind of stuff that happens around here, except it's not so much that it's crazy people. It's just people that are super calm and super practical.
Yeah, I don't this is the state of Florida, man. So, good luck trying to stir something up down here.
Right.
Yeah, I like I think we can all agree on this point, but I like that Adam brought up Team Human, right? The race, there's one of us, right? And I do think that this is a distraction. This is a
Oh yeah, listen, if you're breaking into my house, I don't care what your race is. I don't care what your religion is. I don't care what your political affiliation is. Are you trying to hurt me? Yes or no?
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but such a mess over there in the Middle East too, because everybody's hands are dirty for thousands of years. We're sure as shit not fixing it.
It's biblical.
Well, there's dirty and there's dirty though. I mean, there's if you look at it on one side, that maybe a particular group of people have been just so annoying that they've been kicked out of everywhere. Like they just don't play well with others. But is that a killing? I don't think that deserves a killing.
Yeah, genocide's bad no matter who it's perpetrated on.
Yeah.
I'll say that. I'll go on record to say that. I don't think that's controversial.
Yeah.
But
I mean, like, I mean, like I might be annoyed by people, but that doesn't mean I want them dead. I mean, I just go away. Don't go away
Well,
mad. Just go
and
away.
so the terrible thing is not to dive too deep into politics, but
Yeah.
we've been bombing the Middle East for so long. It's like every time that you kill somebody who's innocent, you create an enemy, and
Mhm.
a justified enemy. If somebody came and bombed my house and killed my kids trying to attack somebody else, I'm gonna want to kill you. And that's been perpetrated for so long. When you have Israeli guards shooting reporters or children at a border, you do that kind of stuff for long enough, and you build up an extreme that can be even worse than you against you.
Yeah.
It's
But then we
and
have to
that's what I mean.
question.
There's no good guys and there's bad guys. Like, yeah, you need to defend yourself, but why were you there? So nobody's hands are clean. And it's like, well, you still have to do something.
Well, having unclean hands is not the same thing as just being a straight up murderer, right?
That's true.
Yeah.
And it's like anything else. Not everybody's bad.
True.
Not every cop is bad, but a bad cop can, do a lot of damage. And, if you have one corrupt leader running a state, you can have a lot of damage get done.
Yeah.
And yeah, I heard somebody saying that, that really what we've turned into is, it's not gangs or corporations, but it's these giant industries against industries.
Mm.
It's agriculture, it's the military industrial complex, it's the military, big pharma. All these things are vying, plus countries, plus things, and they're playing a giant game of power. And we're all down here like, yeah, don't kill people, no genocide. And it's like, yeah, we want the oil, we want the land,
Mhm.
we that new lithium resource. And I don't know where I'm going with that. It's depressing.
It is. It is very
Well,
depressing.
back to your point of like watching videos or clips of the conflict or whatnot, like we even have to question those now, because with the technology to deep fake, pretty much whatever you want, like you really have to wonder, like, and this is just what we're
Well, and it's absolutely being
aware
used.
of, right? Like,
During Desert Storm, when we were going in, they were taking broadcasts from Saddam, intercepting them, modifying them, and rebroadcasting them to the troops or to his military forces. And that was being done way back then. Of course, they're using, I don't know, Chat GPT 14 or whatever.
yeah. So and I don't know, I heard somebody say, I forget where, otherwise I would give credit because it was a really good piece of advice, but it was essentially don't believe the hype. And that was, in my mind, that was basically what this person's answer would have been to if they had been asked what was the best piece of advice ever given to you
Mm.
ever, right? And would you modify it if throw back to 13 questions? But yeah, don't believe the hype, because there's two. I mean, I didn't know this was a thing, but did you know that there's a history of atrocity propaganda? Like
Oh
this
yeah.
whole thing of
Oh yeah.
the babies is
Yeah,
not
it's
new.
it's literally one of the oldest books in like social military warfare.
The oldest
It's
tricks in the book.
yeah, it's
That was the first thing that came to mind when they were talking about beheading babies. Just the fact of that it's alliterative partially, and it's so short, and people were repeating it
well, and it does
like
not matter
verbatim.
that the original reporter who reported that retracted his initial report.
Right, and
It's
they're still
baked into
talking
the
about it too.
collective. Yeah, it's baked into the collective.
Damage is
Yeah.
done. I mean, that's the point
Yeah.
of the psyop, right?
Yeah, it's
Right.
like Syria, chemical attacking its own, citizens. Doesn't matter
Right.
if it's not true. The MSN will still repeat it. It's
It's
what
like,
Hitler said, you repeat a lie, enough and it becomes the truth.
yeah.
It's definitively true.
Yeah, it was like when I heard the beheaded babies thing, I thought that does not sound right. That just on its face, it sounded like it was wrong or some made up crap. Like I'm not saying that it's impossible for people to do these kinds of atrocities, but it seems like an awful lot of tedious work for
It was the perfect
demoralization.
it was the perfect salacious story to get your country riled up against the enemy.
Yeah, yeah,
And look, somebody's launching rockets into your city, blowing up buildings indiscriminately.
Mhm.
They're not good guys. 200 people kidnapped. That's there's nothing good about that.
And see, this is part of the calculus that I've been operating on. There's laws around warfare and the conduct of conflict, and there's certain things that are accepted and certain things that are not. I mean, it's a brutal business, no matter how you look at it. But there are certain things that you do. You try to avoid civilian casualties wherever you can. You try to protect civilians and innocents wherever you can. Ultimately, though, you have to deal with your adversary. And some people do those things and some people don't. And there's also things that you just don't ever do. That's also like anathema when it comes to warfighting. Things like quartering troops with civilians, or hiding, fighting from a hospital, fighting from a church, that kind of thing. And that stuff seems to happen routinely with certain groups of people. Israel tends to not do it. The U.S. tends to not do it. England doesn't. Russia's not doing it.
Yeah, but
Hamas and Hezbollah are doing it.
They are. But then this is where I go deeper, because it's like, whose hands are bloodied in this? What about all the NGOs that are supporting these groups, that are supplying the people, the supplies in a, you have, like parts of Gaza, they're completely locked down. All the utilities, all of the supplies are controlled by Israel, filled with civilians. And then, it's, hey, get out now. We're bombing the place. And
and that's the other thing that's civil.
If you're an 80-year-old lady, you ain't getting out. If you're somebody with a disability or health issue, I don't know. So then you have just like that situation. Like, what kind of despair are you going to create amongst poor people who feel that they're being, enslaved or captured? Like, that's, to me, it's like, well, if you don't have the resources to fight back, you're going to make friends with the bad guy. You're going to become the bad guy. It's what is it? It's like crabs in a bucket, rats in a cage. Like, captured animals will sometimes do everything to free themselves.
Yeah.
A dog, biting through metal, breaking its teeth just to get out of a cage. So I don't know. I take it levels deep of it's like, well, our government is supporting it. Our, NGOs are supporting it. Everybody's making money on the back end. We're, involved in all of this political maneuvering. Just look at all the proxy wars that we've done for the last, 40 or 50 years that we know about, just to destabilize and change for our benefit. So at the end of the day, I'm like, you are 100% right in everything that you're saying. And then I say it's also 100% our fault for letting it become that.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I don't disagree. In Palestine, they had, they had their own motivations for doing what they did. I think it was an unreasonable thing to do, an evil thing to do. But I don't dispute that they had their motivation for it. Justification? I don't think so. I don't think it can be justified, but understandable. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. But again, like this specific situation, then it goes so deep, because oh my gosh, the fact that they took like 5 or 6 hours to respond, that there was no, like, you have the best military in the world with the most sophisticated surveillance system, with the most sophisticatedly controlled border, and then you drop the ball. All of your troops happen to be, the majority of your special forces are off, at the peninsula far away. It's, it just has all those hallmarks of going, this was probably 1,000 times worse than it should have been.
Yeah.
And if you look at the response, it's like, well, it is a good justification for wiping out a problem that you've been dealing with for decades.
Well, there's an awful lot that we could get into about this conflict in particular. Like conspiracy theory level stuff, and not unreasonable, I think. That's kind of not the direction I was intending to go. Certainly there's questions about why the Israelis would have pulled the troops away from the border and abandoned those areas before this happened, considering especially that they knew that they had people coming in or that were practicing for practicing for this kind of thing in Gaza at the time. But I think the thing that I was struggling with when I started this inquiry was about knowing how Israel has been, knowing how the Palestinians have been and everybody around them. Was this the right thing to have happen? And I think no, it wasn't. But I do question the motivation of the rest of the Israelis' actions when it comes to pulling back their troops and leaving that sector just completely unguarded. That seems ridiculous to me.
Yeah, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me either. Yeah. Are you familiar with the USS Liberty, that guy?
Oh yeah. Yes, I am.
Adam, do you know the story? I can summarize it, but I'm sure that guy could do a better job.
I may be familiar.
Okay, so for the listener's sake, I'll try to summarize it as short as possible. The thing that got us into the war in Cuba was that a ship was at anchor in Havana Harbor, and it was I'm sorry, no, that was a different one. I'm sorry. The USS Liberty was an intel gathering ship that was off the coast of Egypt during the war between Israel and Egypt. They were fighting over the Sinai Peninsula. And the short version of that is that it was strafed repeatedly and attacked by Israeli aircraft while it was on patrol. It was not really what I would consider it's not what I would consider a war fighting ship. It was more intel collection. They had guns on board because they had to be able to defend themselves and stuff. But they got raked pretty hard over several different attacks, and a lot of people died. And nobody seems to want to acknowledge it or press the Israelis on why they did it or who ordered it. So I was starting to think of the attack that got us into the war in Cuba. I was thinking the other ship.
Yeah, that other false flag.
Yeah.
Not the U.S. Liberty wasn't a false flag, but
yeah, right. It wasn't a false flag. It was just a straight up attack, and
killed us.
It was clear that the ship was an American ship because they were flying their battle ensign, which is, if you've never seen one, is freaking enormous. They tend to go from like the top of the mast to nearly to the deck, and they're very large, and they fly those so that people don't accidentally attack the wrong ship.
Yeah, so that was a bit of history that I recently came into awareness of within the last this year. But yeah, definitely not widely known. Seems like at least nobody talks about it.
And as an old sailor, I mean, I look at the report, some of the tech log entries and the way the fight was described, and I can't imagine what legitimate purpose they would have had for doing that. It just I'm not doubting that they did it. I can't think of a legitimate purpose for doing it. I can't even think of an aspect of fuckery that would cause it. Like,
unless they're doing something that they don't want us to know about, right? Trying to hide something, apparently.
Maybe, but they're in any of the stories, there doesn't seem to be any indication like it didn't look like they were trying to cover troop movements. It didn't look like they were trying to prevent the discovery of something.
Well, and who knows? War is good for business on so many levels
Yeah.
and for power shifts that it could have been something as simple as somebody wanting to organize and orchestrate that one event so that they could sell more arms. Every time North Korea does, saber rattling, we sell, protection munitions overseas. To me, it all, and actually to just kind of cap my point on your question from before on like how
Sure.
suss out the good guy or the bad guy. When I said like it's all bullshit, they're like everybody's guilty, everybody's hands are dirty. And from that standpoint, you got to look at the situation at hand as exactly as it is.
Mm-hmm.
As it stands with all the fuckery that's happened, you still got to defend yourself and you still got to neutralize the target. And then figure out what's wrong that got you into that situation.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, that probably will never happen.
Yeah. I tend to look at it from what are my values,
Mhm.
and are the actors in this doing something that I would do, or are they doing something that's completely antithetical to anything that I would ever dream of engaging? The thing with uh, leaving the territory and going to a kibbutz and going house to house murdering people.
You can't let that happen.
Yeah, yeah. That's
well,
what tells me it's a bad guy.
This is the same thing. It's like if you have somebody who had a terrible childhood, with terrible abuse, excuse me, and then they act out on somebody else, rape, kill,
Right.
murder, there's compassion there, but it doesn't mean you don't go unpunished.
Right. Exactly.
And I view it the exact same way that.
Yeah. And I've been to one of the towns that's getting bombarded right now. Last time I was in Israel, I had to stay at a hotel in Ashkelon, which is it's a few miles north of the northern wall of Gaza, and that town is, there's nothing really, it's not a military town. It's, there's some industry there, but it's just a bunch of people living in houses and apartments. And when they start mortaring that place, or when they start dropping Katyusha rockets on it, it's that's that. I think it's an unreasonable target.
Yeah.
For that. So,
it's a target of last resort, limited resources, maximum impact.
Yeah, true, but that doesn't make it any more legal. It doesn't make it any more legitimate as a military target. Do
they even have the capability to pick a target? Because aren't they making these rockets out of like water pipes that are digging out of the ground or something like that?
There's a lot of munitions being supplied from like Iran and other countries, and I guarantee you a lot of the arms that we've been distributing over the last 10 years have made it over there.
Yeah, they've been talking about American M4s and stuff like that coming from Afghanistan, shipped by the Taliban
we gave them
to Palestinian troops.
Good old.
Yeah. Then when you look at it, at Israel's response to it, I mean, they're going in and they're attacking legitimate military targets. The problem is that the legitimate military targets are doing things that rules of armed conflict do not condone. Like they'll set up shop on the top floor of a hospital.
Yeah. Doing terrorist things.
Yeah. They could have a whole command and control system set up on top of, on top of a hospital or in the basement of an apartment complex or something like that. And Israel will tell people, "Hey, we're going to bomb this one next. Get everybody out." And the Palestinians are telling them not to leave. So, what do you do? What do you do? I mean,
to be in that position, yeah,
at that point, it's not It's not the Israelis killing them; it's the Palestinians that aren't letting them leave.
Well, at the end of the day, I'm a huge fan of boots on the ground as opposed to indiscriminate targeting. Because if your intel is wrong or the accuracy of the device is off, which happens, um, although the consequences to your troops may not be as much, um, I don't know, man. It's like you said, it's a city with civilians. You gotta. It seems to me one of those situations where you would need to take the extra care to do it more dangerously to try to, because imagine being held captive in that. That's the worst thing that I can't even imagine.
Mm-hmm.
And then everybody's given up on you. Your own people have given up on you. The opposing side has given up on you. You're literally just cannon fodder.
Yeah. Yeah. My position has always been, if I get captured, have whoever is coming to respond drop ordnance on my position, and I'll get out in the fucking chaos.
So while we're on this topic, I've been
Mhm.
hanging on to this news article from Huffington Post. I put it in the chat for you guys.
Okay.
It's on an archived page, right? So,
Yeah.
but this was October 13th, Huffington Post. I'm not a big fan, but the headline is stunning State Department memo warns diplomats no Gaza de-escalation talk. And to really cut to the chase of the article, in messages circulated on Friday, which were viewed by the Huffington Post somehow, but they were circulated on Friday by the staff. The State Department staff wrote that high level officials do not want press materials to include 3 specific phrases: de-escalation / ceasefire, one phrase. Second phrase is end to violence / bloodshed. And third one is restoring calm. So none of these phrases should be used in the mainstream media to talk about this conflict. How does that make you guys feel?
I don't know. It seems pretty par for the core. There was a resolution put forward into the UN to supply relief and aid to Gaza, and the only people who contested it was the United States, and it delayed everything significantly. It seems like it seems like that's exactly the talking points that they would want right now. There's people that want war,
Yeah,
flat out. It's good business.
right. So wait, the UN was trying to send aid and then we said no?
Yeah, there was a resolution that was set up, and because of the wording of it, the No Agenda show covered it. But essentially, it was that there was wording that being part of like the UN, it's baked in, it's already assumed that we do this, and they're like, no, we want reclarification in this document, and we're not signing it until that gets done. So it was a purposeful a stalling of the getting it done.
Okay, so this would be, yeah, so in line with preventing a de-escalation or a ceasefire, right? Or
Exactly.
restoring calm, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Push things further closer to the line of no return. See if I can't find that.
I don't know. That kind of makes me think that there's an agenda that there's a whole lot of people that want war, right? If we're not even going to mention restoring calm.
Yeah, I don't know that it's necessarily about wanting war. I think there's people that are certainly looking for justice after what happened on October 7. I mean, telling somebody that they're not allowed to go and engage their adversaries that have demonstrated murderous intent and a willingness to do just about anything to further their goal. I mean, that have repeatedly, that's part of their doctrine that the elimination of Jews everywhere and the state of Israel is their objective. This isn't just, we want to establish a homeland for ourselves. they're looking for eradication.
Yeah, the genocide part.
Yeah. So it, should we not take them at their word?
Well,
I mean, they've
that's,
demonstrated a willingness to execute on that plan, if you'll pardon the phraseology.
as far as cutting through the bullshit to get to, figure out right versus wrong or what side to be on.
Mhm.
Something that I mentioned to you, but I didn't really talk to you too much about it. Is this Azazel character, and it's just the name of a Telegram chat, right? But whoever runs this picked a very interesting name. Um, Azazel is responsible. He's an angel that was mentioned in the Book of Enoch, and he's
Mhm.
responsible for teaching men how to make weapons and cosmetics. And for that, he was cast out of heaven. But so there's an interesting backstory there to the news, quote unquote news feed. It's basically just a feed, but it's apolitical, which I
Mhm.
really really appreciate. But it talks, I mean, it deals with a lot of the current events, current issues. Um, so not only just the popular things, but there's stuff on there about like shortages reports for if you're looking to stock up on anything. Or he does earthquake reports. There's chemtrail reports, like all every day, right? There's loud booms and explosions, train derail trackings. Like it's really if you're familiar with Charles Bukowski and how depressing it can be reading that guy, it's
Mm.
it's very much in that lane. So uh, I can't spend a whole lot of time on there for a long period without you know being mindful of that. But his that viewpoint that he provides is whoever's running that is pretty novel, I would say, and not anything that I've been exposed to thus far in my life. But there is definitely a faction breakdown, which I have found very useful. And it's if you're familiar with the movie called Flight of the Dragons in 1984,
Mm.
it's an animated film. It's made for children, right? But it talks about it mentions this is a training film essentially for to introduce children to this idea. But four factions. The red is the bad faction, right? The red faction is bad faction. That's the people that like to do adrenochrome stuff, right?
Mm.
You have blue, green, and gold are the other three factions. And having that categorization system to that lens to view things with has really separated some issues for me. So I get basically all of the headlines that I bring to the show every week is stuff that I have curated off of Azazel's page there. So it's been super helpful for me, and it's kind of been a guiding inspiration behind the show for segments of it anyway, right? Um, but yeah, one of the before we move on to more headlines, one of the things I've been introduced to through the Azazel Telegram is Cliff High, and I was wondering if you guys have heard of Mr. Cliff High before.
I've heard of him. Yep.
Yep.
Okay, so everybody we're so pretty familiar. He wrote some kind of code to essentially predict 9/11. I'm a little fuzzy on the backstory, but you guys are familiar with his work and all that?
Yeah,
I
I've heard many a podcast with him.
yeah. I'm unfamiliar with that aspect of it.
Okay, Adam, can you summarize quickly? Do you mind? You're probably
Offhand, I don't know. I just know
Oh,
that I've heard his work often.
okay. Anyway,
Not enough to summarize, so.
he puts out little like 15-minute audio clips every now and again on his Twitter profile, and he makes predictions for upcoming events, right? Because he has this, it's not a chat GPT language learning model or anything like that that I can understand. It's something completely different that he came up with, him and I guess one other guy maybe. I should really do some more research. But anyway, some of the main points that he is predicting, I guess, in the future is going to be the separation of the people from the mainstream media. And I wanted to bring this up even more so because of that guy's inquiry. But I think that we can see this happening, right, in real time. I think a lot of people are getting wise to the fact that they're being actively deceived, right? So at least the people that are in alternative media, hopefully most of them they're not actively trying to deceive anybody. So there's going to be a shift away from cable, I guess, to alternate sources.
Yeah, I started to see some indications of this actually in pop culture reference. There was a Babylon Bee article this last week.
I love the Babylon Bee.
Yeah, Babylon Bee article about that editors at the New York Times are waiting patiently by the phone for Hamas to call and tell them what the next story is. So this was in the wake of the initial story was that Israel had bombed a hospital, and then it came out that it wasn't Israel that did it. It was a missile that fell short. And then it came out that it didn't actually hit the hospital. It just blew up in the parking lot, and that no 500 people did not die. But as you pointed out earlier about another story, the fact that it had gotten out there in the first place had the desired effect, because then we had people in Libya and in Iran and in Syria and Jordan massing outside the American embassies, demanding the heads of the Israelis over this attack on the hospital that didn't happen.
Yeah, it's a lie travels faster than the truth.
Yes.
Two other interesting points that Cliff brought up was that there's a prediction of some kind of a collapse of the main religions. So this is a very interesting point, given that Jews and Muslims have always been at each other's throats, apparently, or right. But he says that it's going to start in the Vatican. So there's some interesting theories swirling around there about how Pope Francis might actually be the last pope, and this is predicted by a monk who wrote kind of like these stanzas, kind of like in Nostradamus form way back when, right? So there's this theory that Pope Francis could be the last pope, and then to hear Cliff make this announcement is kind of interesting. But the other thing that he mentioned, and that ties into one of the headlines I wanted to cover for sure this episode, is that there's going to be moon disclosure happening very soon. And with this, he means that we moon bases have been a thing, are a thing currently, right? We're in that we're mining the moon. We get resources off of it, and I don't know, a whole bunch of other stuff about the moon that will hopefully wake people up more. But who knows? Maybe it won't, because we had this whole UFO thing happen, and it's been in the mainstream media, and nobody's really. It's kind of like everybody was expecting it. Nobody was shocked. Like, it was a dud, basically. Is that how it felt to you guys?
It turned out to be kind of a non-event. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm really excited about moon disclosure. Oh, but speaking of,
I'm super curious about that, because just having gone outside at night and looked up, and doing it quite frequently because I'm blessed to live in a place that has dark skies. I don't see a whole lot that gives me indication that there's that there's anything happening there. Other than the normal, orbits and rotation.
I could send you
That's
some pretty interesting video clips.
okay. I've seen it. I've seen a few videos where there's, like it looks like there's something flying around or three things flying in formation. It's hard to tell what it is because, fuzzy video and all that stuff. I don't discount that stuff, but it seems where I sit now, it seems unlikely to me that there is some large scale mining operation that's happening there.
See, I don't know about mining, but I would be very surprised if we did not have a military presence on the moon. Just from a tactical standpoint, the Air Force has its own space program that's been going on forever. We know about the X-35B, disappearing for over 800 days at a time. And that's what we know about, what we're allowed to know about. I say, with everything with UFOs, the UAP, we know that there's, craft coming from outside of, our atmosphere, outside of our solar system into us. That's a pretty significant threat. I would want something facing outward. I would want some sort of sensory systems. I would want some sort of, attack systems. And additionally, from a tactical standpoint of Earth, I mean, the moon is king. Plus, only one side faces you. So you do have a side in which you have relative secrecy. As long as you're on the dark side of the moon there, where we're never really seeing it, you're fine.
Yeah, I would think that if they're doing anything, that it would probably be some kind of a sensor array or something like that.
Yeah, I would be thinking
that
sensor
points
array.
outward.
Yeah, and I mean, look how long we were able to keep, things like the Manhattan Project or different aircraft that we were flying secret. And those things are, here on the ground. Those, once you launch them up, and they're constantly launching rockets for, DoD and everything else. I mean, NASA, was so heavily funded. I mean, that was a majority of the payloads they were taking up were for, had military payloads. So it certainly makes sense to me. I would be very surprised if we did not have something like that already out there. Because why not?
Yeah, I mean, if you can, why wouldn't you? And there's also the aspect of civil and I guess admiralty law. If you don't exercise your rights to something, to the ownership of a thing, then you cede them to whoever shows up. And it's not like this is some kind of special construct. It's just that's always been the way that it is. If you walk away, somebody else can come in behind you, no matter what you say about it. And if you want to assert that claim, then you have to do something forceful to remove them. It's like it's treated as law, but it's kind of logic, right? So to go and maintain a presence on the moon is a form of, or would have been a form of like asserting property ownership, property rights. It's the same kind of thing that happens when we get ships that are transiting the Straits of Malacca and the Taiwan Strait. It's a freedom of navigation exercise, and the Chinese can stand there and bitch and squawk as much as they want. But unless they're willing to do the hard thing and forcibly expel American and other nations' warships from that space, then they have no legitimate claim. The sea belongs to everybody. And the moon would belong to everybody as long as nobody's on it.
That's right.
But there is. Didn't the astronaut say that they saw something?
There's a lot of weird stuff about.
And then they had to leave.
Yeah. There was some apocryphal, I'll say, documentation. Don't know how true it is.
The moon,
about Neil Armstrong and Ed Aldrin in the lander, talking about people lining up on the opposite side of a crater that they had landed near.
Yep.
They're here already. The ships, blah blah blah, and there's transcripts out there.
Well, if anybody really wants to do a deep dive on that, I recommend you watch the video from when they came back from the first landing on the moon, all the astronauts together.
Yeah.
And they go through their talk, because there is some highly suspect, questionable behavior in which they're asked about, like, whether or not they, saw the stars while they were on the moon, and they're looking at each other before they answer. There's literally a point in time when one of the astronauts elbow nudges the other guy while he's answering a question. There's clearly, the way I look at it, I'm like, okay, the story you're telling us is not the story you want us to know, or not what happened.
Right.
And either way, there's something suspect going on here.
Mhm.
And I mean, it only makes sense. When Amelia Earhart flies across, to do this, this world-defining feat, she's also a spy. Julia Roberts is also a spy, right? Like, of course, you're going to have, you're in the space race. There's going to be alternate tasks while you're out there. I mean, for heaven's sake, they called it Apollo. What does Apollo have to do with the moon? And I get seriously, I think it has to do with catastrophism and them going up there and trying to find evidence of cyclical micronova of the sun. And I think they did find that. There's some stuff in there in which they're cryptically speaking about the types of black spherules that they find in abundance up there. They're like talking about, like, in kg terms, about the minerals that they're finding. So yeah, there's a lot of interesting stuff when you start looking into the moon and its history, the lore, and what the people have said when they come back. It's weird.
Yeah, the moon is so interesting. Is it rings like a bell, so it's hollow, but they're mining it. How does that work? So many questions. Hopefully we'll get moon disclosure soon and figure out all this out. But
Listen, it's probably just the Truman Show.
Yeah,
it's where the archons are truly at. I do think about that, though. In the past, I literally go, well, looking at how far back humans span, how far back technology spans, things that we find, and how they're, using these incredible things that have to have been created with, large rotating machineries and technologies and things that we cannot do today for unknown purposes. Well, what if somebody at some point was able to make a moon, either a place to go for protection when things on the Earth got, too crazy and tough, or it's literally just like an orbiting space station. And I mean, imagine you come across that as part of our ancient lineage. Are you going to tell anybody on Earth that you found something like that? Or are you going to try to exploit it for control over the Earth?
Or do you tell them and then distract them with other stories that have nothing to do with that? Because they're
all of the above.
That's one of the things that Cliff brought up. There is a evidence that of a society, a civilization found recently, apparently in India somewhere, and it's been dated and all this stuff. And these people have cone heads, right? They have the elongated skulls, and allegedly this is a pre-lunar society on Earth. So, like, is the moon is a giant spaceship that is mining itself somehow. But anyway, speaking of mining, we will get back to the moon in another episode. But this next article, put that in the chat for you guys, is from Ars Technica, and it is NASA. NASA finds water and organics in asteroid sample. Possible clues to origin of life. So it's kind of a lengthy, more kind of lengthy, not too bad. We'll get through it fine. We'll have enough time to do this and then get to our sword segment. Out of Johnson Space Center in Texas, as they unveiled the first samples recovered from an asteroid on Wednesday, scientists were giddy at the prospects of what this material will tell us about the origin of our planet and possibly even ourselves. After 7 years in space, a small spacecraft carrying samples from the asteroid Bennu landed in Utah in late September. Following carefully choreographed procedures to prevent the contamination of asteroid dust and rocks from life on Earth, samples were transferred into a clean room at Johnson Space Center in Houston. Since then, scientists have examined some of the material that was collected outside of the primary container to glean some initial insights. They revealed some of their first data during an event at the center on Wednesday. Quote, "Boy, did we really nail it," said Dante Loretta, a scientist from the University of Arizona, who is the principal investigator of the, get this, OSIRIS-Rex mission. I wanted to bring this name up because I remember when they launched this satellite. I remember this because Marty Leeds had pointed out the fact that the asteroid that they're going to is called Bennu, right? Well, in the Egyptian creation myth, the first piece of primordial land that emerges from the primordial waters, right, is called a Benben stone, right? The Benben stone.
Yeah, the capstone from the top of the pyramid.
Right. And the spacecraft name is OSIRIS-Rex, which is King Osiris.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So what is NASA doing here with these names again? We're using Apollo to go to the moon, and now we're using King Osiris to land on Benbenstone.
Yeah, they've been all about Egyptian mythology imagery since the early outset of the space program. I mean, the Apollo logo involved. Oh gosh, I'm having a brain fart. Orion, the hunter, and the position of the belt and the sword, or the belt, I guess, in this sword or scabbard, very closely reflects the position of the three pyramids at the Giza Plateau and some other structures around there. Right. So it's been going way back. I mean, and who was the Egyptian equivalent of Orion? Was it Horus?
Horus was the son of Osiris and Isis.
Yeah.
I don't know if.
Yeah, so Orion was Greek. Yeah, it's Horus.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's between the two different cultures.
There you go.
Yeah, that was the mapping. So there's all kinds of that stuff that runs all the way through the story and imagery and naming conventions and all that.
It's almost like they're trying to tell us something.
Yeah, without telling us something.
Yeah. So before the launch of the mission, scientists said that recovery of 60 grams of material would be considered a success. While the effort to determine the overall mass is ongoing, Loretta said early estimates are that the asteroid capture mission collected about 250 grams of pebbles and dust from the surface of Bennu. After the material is cataloged, it will be loaned out in small quantities to 230 scientists across 35 countries who are members of the Origins Spectral Interpretation, Resource Identification, and Security Regolith Explorer, or OSIRIS-Rex mission team. Digging into our origins. So what's the big deal about recovering pristine samples from the surface of an asteroid? The big deal is that Bennu, an asteroid in a near-Earth orbit that is about 1/2 kilometer across, is believed to be a time capsule for the types of rocks and chemicals that existed when the planets from our solar system more than 4 billion years ago. That existed when the planets formed in our solar. There we go. When the planets formed. By studying the asteroid, scientists are looking back to that primordial era when Earth began transitioning from an extremely hot world with a hellish surface into something more like a mud ball. Poking these pebbles and rocks with sophisticated equipment here on Earth may allow scientists to answer questions about how terrestrial planets like Earth and Mars formed, and possibly whether asteroids seeded Earth with the building blocks for life. In a preliminary analysis of some of the dust, scientists hit the jackpot with a sample that is nearly 5% carbon by mass and has abundant water in the form of hydrated clay minerals.
Hmm.
It is highly plausible that asteroids like this delivered the vast majority of the water now found on Earth's oceans, lakes, and rivers billions of years ago. By piecing together clues from the asteroid dust, scientists believe they may better understand how Earth went from an uninhabited mud ball to teeming life today. One of the investigators says that it's loaded with organics. This is incredible material. If we're looking for biologically essential organic molecules, we picked the right asteroid and we brought back the right sample. This is an astrobiologist's dream. But wait, there's more. Beyond exploring the origins of Earth and possibly life upon it, material from this mission will provide insight into other questions. For example, NASA and some companies are interested in harvesting resources from asteroids to fuel human exploration deeper into the solar system. A thorough investigation of Bennu will provide information about what resources exist in this type of carbon-rich asteroid and how difficult it will be to harvest and process them for fuel. NASA, of course, is also interested in planetary defense. Bennu, as one of the smallest subset of asteroids that have orbits outside of the main asteroid belt, is of high interest because it might potentially intersect with Earth. According to scientists, there is a 1 in 2,700 chance that Bennu could strike Earth between now and September of 2182. Although Bennu is only about 1/20th the size of the large asteroid that wiped out the dinosaurs over 70 million years ago, if you believe that narrative, it is large enough to destroy multiple cities or cause a huge tsunami. Understanding the nature of Bennu will help scientists and engineers better understand how best to impact and change the orbit of threatening asteroids in the future. And lastly, an uplifting story. The world is awash in bad news at this moment, with terrible conflicts in Ukraine and Israel capturing much of the international discussion. But the story of asteroid retrieval is a positive one. NASA has worked closely with space agencies in Japan and Canada on the mission and partnered with scientists in dozens of countries to study the material brought back. Such an effort unites humanity rather than dividing it. Why are we doing this? A NASA administrator said, or asked, because we at NASA, we are trying to find out who we are and what we are, where we came from, what our place is in the vastness we call the universe. This is not the first mission to return samples from an asteroid. The Japanese Space Agency has led in this area. Its small Hayabusa 1 spacecraft returned 1,500 tiny asteroid grains to Earth in 2010, and a decade later, it got about 5 more grams back to Earth. But the material from OSIRIS-Rex is many times more plentiful, and with larger rocks embedded within the sample, will likely provide more meaningful scientific data. The wonder of OSIRIS-Rex is that we still don't know what we're going to find, but we are at the tantalizing moment of inquiry when we can be sure that we're going to be dazzled by those discoveries in the coming months and years. What I find most inspiring about big science missions like this is that they show what humanity at its best can be. It takes broad international cooperation and a coming together of people from many different backgrounds and specialties to do something that individuals cannot do alone, reaching far beyond the cradle of our civilization to find out something new about our cosmos, our world, and ourselves. If we work together, we can do great things. If we work together, the future of our species is limitless. Talk about a silver lining, right? Something that we try to pick out in this segment. There's any silver linings. I like to think that a lot of the times the headlines I pick out are silver linings based off of what's going on around us in the world right now. But
Mhm.
this one for sure, it ends on a positive note. It's very helpful, and just goes right along with all the other wacky disclosure stuff coming out.
Well, and you would hope if they find something that they would tell us. I don't, when it comes to NASA specifically, you can go back to the Viking missions, do a test, drop the probes, everything in, get a chemical reaction, shows life, end up discounting it. If you go back years later, they're now questioning whether or not they actually did get a positive result. But moreover, if you look at the original like photos of Mars, they're all with orange skies. Everything is orange. They miscalibrated all of their coloring. The original photos that came back from Mars had a blue sky. The newest photos that they give you from the landers have blue skies. And what blows me away, because I look at things like that and I'm like, okay, well, did you have evidence back then? Why wouldn't you show us, why did you change this? And if you go back to some of the photos of the moon and you color correct back, you'll actually start to see green on sides of rocks that only all face in one direction. And actually, I pulled these pictures up. I'm going to share them in the chat. The one thing that really, beyond anything else, ruined my complete faith in NASA wanting to find life was the Mars crab. And when that came out, it's this picture that it looks like an alien crab, indistinguishably. There's nothing else that I can possibly even think of, pareidolia doing this. Regardless, I also included in here some photos of crabs that have been found on Earth that have been petrified in sediment. And I'm going, you have ancient sedimentary rocks with all these lines in it. You have what appears to be a crab embedded. Wouldn't that be the one thing you would want to drive the rover over to and get a closer look? No, they drive on and keep going. And I go, okay, why? If that's actually Mars, why are you doing that? And at that point, I lost any faith that NASA wanted us to know about any kind of life, whether it be all the astronauts coming about, talking about the craft that they've seen outside of their craft, the creatures, seeing like a snake-like creature outside their window, seeing craft on the surface. All of these things have been reported, but they can't even tell us about bacteria or crabs or simple life. And when it comes down to the philosophical, going back to what NASA really was and Apollo, and there being lots of obfuscation, it just makes me wonder about the entire agency. That it seems to me that there is some sort of psychological operation being instituted on the American people through the information they put out or the information they withhold.
Yeah, there's got to be a little bit of truth in the lie to make it believable. So
I think though, if you're gonna fly months and go all the way to Mars to have to explain that you got crabs on Mars, that seems like it might be counterproductive to your credibility.
space STDs.
I want a t-shirt that says I went to Mars and all I got was crabs.
If I didn't bring that up, I wouldn't be that guy.
This is true. Gotta get. Was that their first one this episode? No, it's got to be at least two.
It is. Yeah, no, that's the first one.
Okay. Well, we have about 40 minutes left in this episode, and I'll save. We've got more headlines to get through. I'll save them for next time, at least the good ones anyway. But for this week's sword segment, I thought that we would listen a little bit from Mr. Earl Nightingale. This is quite this is a lengthy clip. It is a half hour long, but it goes by really, really quickly, just because Earl is such a good orator, and he is one of the people that for some reason when I'm reading books like Neville Goddard, I will start to read in this guy's voice. So, and I think I've mentioned that before on the show. So I wanted to finally share it with you all in case you haven't heard it. But Earl Nightingale was a radio broadcaster for a number of years out of WGN. He was the voice of Sky King, which was a serial series back in the day, and he was also a very well-known motivational speaker. So the YouTube video I had picked out, or the audio recording, is from the 1950s, and it's called "The Strangest Secret." So I thought that we could give this a little listen, and then maybe point out a few things that resonate with us at the end for very quickly, and then we can wrap up the show afterwards. And I know that if Adam or that guy needs to leave early for any reason, that is okay too. You can always go back and re-listen to the show, or just I'll send you this link or whatnot. So without further ado, I will go ahead and hit the play button and mute down, and then.
Hey, Bill, you want to hold for a second?
Yeah, Duke. Yeah. I will.
Talking. My recorder batteries are dying, actually.
Oh no.
That's okay. We'll get a second recording going in about 40 seconds.
Yeah, we're going to ensure that this episode gets released. It is that guy's second appearance. Want to make sure we get that nailed down. I am recording as well, but hopefully, I don't lose power or anything. And then I think once I mute on my mixer, you should still be able to hear the audio. But if it all of a sudden stops, yell at me, and I'll come right back and fix it. But I think, has it been 40 seconds yet? I don't know.
Yep, we're recording.
Okay, cool. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to mute down and then hit the play button, and I'll see you in a few minutes.
Tell you about the strangest secret in the world. Some years ago, the late Nobel Prize-winning Dr. Albert Schweitzer was being interviewed in London, and a reporter asked him, "Doctor, what's wrong with men today?" And the great doctor was silent a moment, and then he said, "Men simply don't think." It's about this that I want to talk with you. We live today in a golden age. This is an era that man has looked forward to, dreamed of, and worked toward for thousands of years. But since it's here, we pretty well take it for granted. We in America are particularly fortunate to live in the richest land that ever existed on the face of the earth, a land of abundant opportunity for everyone. But you know what happens? Well, let's take 100 men who start even at the age of 25. Do you have any idea what will happen to those men by the time they're 65? These 100 men who all start even at the age of 25 believe they're going to be successful. If you ask any one of these men if he wanted to be a success, he'd tell you he did. And you'd notice that he was eager toward life, that there was a certain sparkle to his eye, an erectness to his carriage, and life seemed like a pretty interesting adventure to him. But by the time they're 65, 1 will be rich. 4 will be financially independent. 5 will still be working. 54 will be broke. Now think a moment. Out of the 100, only 5 make the grade. Now why do so many fail? What has happened to the sparkle that was there when they were 25? What's become of the dreams, the hopes, the plans? And why is there such a large disparity between what these men intended to do and what they actually accomplished? When we say about 5% achieve success, we have to define success. And here's the best definition I've ever been able to find. Success is the progressive realization of a worthy ideal. If a man is working toward a predetermined goal and knows where he's going, that man is a success. If he's not doing that, he's a failure. Success is the progressive realization of a worthy ideal. Rollo May, the distinguished psychiatrist, wrote a wonderful book called Man's Search for Himself. And in this book, he says, the opposite of courage in our society is not cowardice. It is conformity. And there you have the trouble today. It's conformity, people acting like everyone else without knowing why, without knowing where they're going. Now think of it. In America right now, there are over 18 million people 65 years of age and older. And most of them are broke. They're dependent on someone else for life's necessities. Now, we learn to read by the time we're 7. We learn to make a living by the time we're 25. Usually by that time, we're not only making a living, we're supporting a family. And yet, by the time we're 65, we haven't learned how to become financially independent in the richest land that has ever been known. Why? We conform. And the trouble is that we're acting like the wrong percentage group, the 95 who don't succeed. Now, why do these people conform? Well, they really don't know. These people believe that their lives are shaped by circumstances, by things that happen to them, by exterior forces. They're outer-directed people. A survey was made one time that covered a lot of men, working men, and these men were asked, why do you work? Why do you get up in the morning? 19 out of 20 had no idea. If you ask them, they'll say, well, everyone goes to work in the morning, and that's the reason they do it, because everyone else is doing it. Now, let's get back to our definition of success. Who succeeds? The only person who succeeds is the person who is progressively realizing a worthy ideal. He's the person who says, I'm going to become this, and then begins to work toward that goal. I'll tell you who the successful people are. A success is the school teacher who's teaching school because that's what he or she wants to do. The success is the woman who's a wife and mother because she wanted to become a wife and mother and is doing a good job of it. The success is the man who runs the corner gas station because that was his dream. That's what he wanted to do. The success is the successful salesman who wants to become a top-notch salesman and grow and build with his organization. A success is anyone who is doing deliberately a predetermined job because that's what he decided to do deliberately. But only 1 out of 20 does that. That's why today there isn't really any competition unless we make it for ourselves. Instead of competing, all we have to do is create. You know, for 20 years, I looked for the key which would determine what would happen to a human being. Was there a key I wanted to know which would make the future a promise that we could foretell to a large extent? Was there a key that would guarantee a person's becoming successful if he only knew about it and knew how to use it? Well, there is such a key, and I found it. Have you ever wondered why so many men work so hard and honestly without ever achieving anything in particular, and others don't seem to work hard and yet seem to get everything? They seem to have the magic touch. You've heard them say that about someone. Everything he touches turns to gold. And have you ever noticed that a man who becomes successful tends to continue to become successful? And on the other hand, have you noticed how a man who's a failure tends to continue to fail? Well, it's because of goals. Some of us have goals, some don't. People with goals succeed because they know where they're going. It's that simple. Think of a ship leaving a harbor, and think of it with the complete voyage mapped out and planned. The captain and crew know exactly where it's going and how long it'll take. It has a definite goal. Now, 9,999 times out of 10,000, it will get to where it started out to get. Now, let's take another ship, just like the first, only let's not put a crew on it or a captain at the helm. Let's give it no aiming point, no goal, no destination. We just start the engines and let it go. I think you'll agree with me that if it gets out of the harbor at all, it'll either sink or wind up on some deserted beach, a derelict. It can't go anyplace because it has no destination and no guidance, and it's the same with a human being. Take the salesman, for example. There's no other person in the world today with the future of a good salesman. Selling is the world's highest paid profession, if we're good at it and if we know where we're going. Every company needs top-notch salesmen, and they reward those men. The sky's the limit for them. But how many can you find? Someone once said the human race is fixed, not to prevent the strong from winning, but to prevent the weak from losing. The American economy today can be likened to a convoy in time of war. The entire economy is slowed down to protect its weakest link, just as the convoy had to go at the speed that would permit its slowest vessel to remain in formation. That's why it's so easy to make a living today. It takes no particular brains or talent to make a living and support a family today. So we have a plateau of so-called security, if that's what a person's looking for. But we do have to decide how high above this plateau we want to aim. Now let's get back to the strangest secret in the world, the story that I wanted to tell you today. Why do men with goals succeed in life and men without them fail? Well, let me tell you something which, if you really understand it, will alter your life immediately. If you understand completely what I'm going to tell you from this moment on, your life will never be the same again. You will suddenly find that good luck just seems to be attracted to you. The things you want just seem to fall in line, and from now on you won't have the problems, the worries, the gnawing lump of anxiety that perhaps you've experienced before. Doubt, fear, well, they'll be things of the past. Here's the key to success and the key to failure. We become what we think about. Now let me say that again. We become what we think about. Throughout all history, the great wise men and teachers, philosophers and prophets have disagreed with one another on many different things. It's only on this one point that they are in complete and unanimous agreement. Listen to what Marcus Aurelius, the great Roman emperor, said. A man's life is what his thoughts make of it. Disraeli said this, everything comes if a man will only wait. I've brought myself by long meditation to the conviction that a human being with a settled purpose must accomplish it, and that nothing can resist a will that will stake even existence for its fulfillment. Ralph Waldo Emerson said this, a man is what he thinks about all day long. William James said, the greatest discovery of my generation is that human beings can alter their lives by altering their attitudes of mind. And he also said, we need only in cold blood act as if the thing in question were real, and it will become infallibly real by growing into such a connection with our life that it will become real. It will become so knit with habit and emotion that our interest in it will be those which characterize belief. And he also said, if you only care enough for a result, you will almost certainly attain it. If you wish to be rich, you will be rich. If you wish to be learned, you will be learned. If you wish to be good, you will be good. Only you must then really wish these things and wish them exclusively, and not wish at the same time 100 other incompatible things just as strongly. In the Bible, you read in Mark 9:23, if thou canst believe, all things are possible to him that believeth. My old friend Dr. Norman Vincent Peale put it this way, this is one of the greatest laws in the universe. Fervently do I wish I had discovered it as a very young man. It dawned upon me much later in life, and I found it to be one of the greatest, if not my greatest discovery outside of my relationship to God. The great law, briefly and simply stated, is that if you think in negative terms, you will get negative results. If you think in positive terms, you will achieve positive results. That is the simple fact, he went on to say, which is at the basis of an astonishing law of prosperity and success. In 3 words, believe and succeed. William Shakespeare put it this way, our doubts are traitors and make us lose the good we oft might win by fearing to attempt. George Bernard Shaw said, people are always blaming their circumstances for what they are. I don't believe in circumstances. The people who get on in this world are the people who get up and look for the circumstances they want, and if they can't find them, make them. Well, that's pretty apparent, isn't it? And every person who discovered this for a while believed that he was the first one to work it out. We become what we think about. Now, it stands to reason that a person who's thinking about a concrete and worthwhile goal is going to reach it, because that's what he's thinking about, and we become what we think about. Conversely, the man who has no goal, who doesn't know where he's going, and whose thoughts must therefore be thoughts of confusion and anxiety and fear and worry, becomes what he thinks about. His life becomes one of frustration and fear and anxiety and worry. And if he thinks about nothing, he becomes nothing. Now, how does it work? Why do we become what we think about? Well, I'll tell you how it works as far as we know. Now, to do this, I want to tell you about a situation that parallels the human mind. Suppose a farmer has some land, and it's good fertile land. Now, the land gives the farmer a choice. He may plant in that land whatever he chooses. The land doesn't care. It's up to the farmer to make the decision. Now, remember, we're comparing the human mind with the land because the mind, like the land, doesn't care what you plant in it. It will return what you plant, but it doesn't care what you plant. Now, let's say that the farmer has 2 seeds in his hand. One is a seed of corn. The other is nightshade, a deadly poison. He digs 2 little holes in the earth, and he plants both seeds, one corn, the other nightshade. He covers up the holes, waters, and takes care of the land, and what will happen? Invariably, the land will return what's planted. As it's written in the Bible, as ye sow, so shall ye reap. Now remember, the land doesn't care. It'll return poison in just as wonderful abundance as it will corn. So up come the 2 plants, one corn, one poison. Now, the human mind is far more fertile, far more incredible and mysterious than the land, but it works the same way. It doesn't care what we plant. Success, failure. A concrete, worthwhile goal, or confusion. Misunderstanding, fear, anxiety, and so on. But what we plant, it must return to us. If the human mind is the last great unexplored continent on Earth, it contains riches beyond our wildest dreams. It will return anything we want to plant. Now, you might say, well, if that's true, why don't people use their minds more? Well, I think they figured out an answer to that one, too. Our mind comes as standard equipment at birth. It's free, and things that are given to us for nothing we place little value on. Things that we pay money for, we value. The paradox is that exactly the reverse is true. Everything that's really worthwhile in life came to us free. Our minds, our souls, our bodies, our hopes, our dreams, our ambitions, our intelligence, our love of family and children and friends and country, all these priceless possessions are free. But the things that cost us money are actually very cheap and can be replaced at any time. A good man can be completely wiped out and make another fortune. He can do that several times. Even if our home burns down, we can rebuild it. But the things we got for nothing, we can never replace. The human mind isn't used because we take it for granted. Familiarity breeds contempt. It can do any kind of job we assign to it, but generally speaking, we use it for little jobs instead of big, important ones. Universities have proved that most of us are operating at about 10% or less of our abilities. So decide now, what is it you want? Plant your goal in your mind. It's the most important decision you ever make in your entire life. What is it you want? Do you want to be an outstanding salesman? A better worker at your particular job? Do you want to go places in your company, in your community? Do you want to get rich? All you've got to do is plant that seed in your mind, care for it, work steadily toward your goal, and it will become a reality. It not only will, there's no way that it cannot. You see, that's a law, like the laws of Sir Isaac Newton, the laws of gravity. If you get on top of a building and jump off, you'll always go down. You'll never go up, and it's the same with all the other laws of nature. They always work. They're inflexible. Think about your goal in a relaxed, positive way. Picture yourself in your mind's eye as having already achieved this goal. See yourself doing the things you will be doing when you've reached your goal. Ours has been called the phenobarbital age, the age of ulcers and nervous breakdowns and tranquilizers. At a time when medical research has raised us to a new plateau of good health and longevity, far too many of us worry ourselves into an early grave trying to cope with things in our own little personal ways without learning a few great laws that will take care of everything for us. These things we bring on ourselves through our habitual way of thinking. Every one of us is the sum total of his own thoughts. He is where he is because that's exactly where he really wants to be, whether he'll admit that or not. Each of us must live off the fruit of his thoughts in the future, because what you think today and tomorrow, next month and next year, will mold your life and determine your future. You're guided by your mind. I remember one time I was driving through eastern Arizona, and I saw one of those giant earth-moving machines roaring along the road at about 35 miles an hour with what looked like 30 tons of dirt in it. A tremendous, incredible machine, and there was a little man perched way up on top with the wheel in his hands guiding it. And as I drove along, I was struck by the similarity of that machine to the human mind. Just suppose you're sitting at the controls of such a vast source of energy. Are you going to sit back and fold your arms and let it run itself into a ditch? Or are you going to keep both hands firmly on the wheel and control and direct this power to a specific, worthwhile purpose? It's up to you. You're in the driver's seat. You see, the very law that gives us success is a two-edged sword. We must control our thinking. The same rule that can lead a man to a life of success, wealth, happiness, and all the things he ever dreamed of for himself and his family. That very same law can lead him into the gutter. It's all in how he uses it, for good or for bad. This is the strangest secret in the world. Now, why do I say it's strange, and why do I call it a secret? Actually, it isn't a secret at all. It was first promulgated by some of the earliest wise men, and it appears again and again throughout the Bible, but very few people have learned it, understand it. That's why it's strange, and why for some equally strange reason it virtually remains a secret. I believe that you could go out and walk down the main street of your town and ask one man after another what the secret of success is, and you probably wouldn't run into one man in a month who could tell you. Now, this information is enormously valuable to us if we really understand it and apply it. It's valuable to us not only for our own lives, but the lives of those around us, our families, employees, associates, and friends. Life should be an exciting adventure. It should never be a bore. A man should live fully, be alive. He should be glad to get out of bed in the morning. He should be doing a job he likes to do because he does it well. One time I heard Grove Patterson, the great late editor-in-chief of the Toledo Daily Blade, make a speech, and as he concluded his speech, he said something I've never forgotten. He said, "My years in the newspaper business have convinced me of several things. Among them, that people are basically good. and that we came from someplace and we're going someplace. So we should make our time here an exciting adventure. The architect of the universe didn't build a stairway leading nowhere. And the greatest teacher of all, the carpenter from the plains of Galilee, gave us the secret time and time again. As ye believe, so shall it be done unto you. I've explained the strangest secret in the world and how it works. Now, on this side, I want to explain how you can prove to yourself the enormous returns possible in your own life by putting this secret to a practical test. I want you to make a test that will last 30 days. It isn't going to be easy, but if you'll give it a good try, it will completely change your life for the better. Now, back in the 17th century, Sir Isaac Newton, the English mathematician and natural philosopher, gave us the natural laws of physics, which apply as much to human beings as they do to the movement of bodies in the universe. And one of these laws is that for every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. Simply stated, as it applies to you and me, it means we can achieve nothing without paying the price. The results of your 30-day experiment will be in direct proportion to the effort you put forth. To be a doctor, you must pay the price of long years of difficult study. To be successful in selling, and remember that each of us succeeds to the extent of his ability to sell. Selling our families on our ideas, selling education in schools, selling our children on the advantages of living the good and honest life, selling our associates and employees on the importance of being exceptional people. To, of course, the profession of selling itself. But to be successful in selling our way to the good life, we must be willing to pay the price. Now, what is that price? Well, it's many things. First, it's understanding emotionally, as well as intellectually, that we literally become what we think about, that we must control our thoughts if we're to control our lives. It's understanding fully that as ye sow, so shall ye reap. Second, it's cutting away all fetters from the mind and permitting it to soar as it was divinely designed to do. It's the realization that your limitations are self-imposed and that the opportunities for you today are enormous beyond belief. It's rising above narrow-minded pettiness and prejudice. And third, it's using all your courage to force yourself to think positively on your own problem, to set a definite and clearly defined goal for yourself, to let your marvelous mind think about your goal from all possible angles, to let your imagination speculate freely upon many different possible solutions, to refuse to believe that there are any circumstances sufficiently strong to defeat you in the accomplishment of your purpose, to act promptly and decisively when your course is clear, and to keep constantly aware of the fact that you are, at this moment, standing in the middle of your own acres of diamonds, as Russell Conwell used to point out. And fourth, save at least 10% of every dollar you earn. It's also remembering that no matter what your present job, it has enormous possibilities if you're willing to pay the price. Now let's just go over the important points in the price each of us must pay to achieve the wonderful life that can be ours. It is, of course, worth any price. 1, you will become what you think about. 2, remember the word imagination and let your mind begin to soar. 3, courage. Concentrate on your goal every day. 4, save 10% of what you earn. And 5, action. Ideas are worthless unless we act on them. Now, I'll try to outline the 30-day test I want you to make. Keep in mind that you have nothing to lose by making this test and everything you could possibly want to gain. There are 2 things that may be said of everyone. Each of us wants something, and each of us is afraid of something. I want you to write on a card what it is you want more than anything else. It may be more money. Perhaps you'd like to double your income or make a specific amount of money. It may be a beautiful home. It may be success at your job. It may be a particular position in life. It could be a more harmonious family. Each of us wants something. Now write down on your card specifically what it is you want. Make sure it's a single goal and clearly defined. You needn't show it to anyone, but carry it with you so that you can look at it several times a day. Think about it in a cheerful, relaxed, positive way each morning when you get up. And immediately you have something to work for, something to get out of bed for, something to live for. Look at it every chance you get during the day and just before going to bed at night. And as you look at it, remember that you must become what you think about, and since you're thinking about your goal, you realize that soon it will be yours. In fact, it's yours really the moment you write it down and begin to think about it. Look at the abundance all around you as you go about your daily business. You have as much right to this abundance as any other living creature. It's yours for the asking. Now we come to the difficult part. Difficult because it means the formation of what is probably a brand new habit, and new habits are not easily formed. Once formed, however, it will follow you for the rest of your life. Stop thinking about what it is you fear. Each time a fearful or negative thought comes into your consciousness, replace it with a mental picture of your positive and worthwhile goal. And there will come times when you'll feel like giving up. It's easier for a human being to think negatively than positively. That's why only 5% are successful. You must begin now to place yourself in that group. For 30 days, you must take control of your mind. It will think about only what you permit it to think about. Each day for this 30-day test, do more than you have to do. In addition to maintaining a cheerful, positive outlook, give of yourself more than you've ever done before. Do this knowing that your returns in life must be in direct proportion to what you give. The moment you decide on a goal to work toward, you're immediately a successful person. You are then in that rare and successful category of people who know where they're going. Out of every 100 people, you belong to the top 5. Don't concern yourself too much with how you're going to achieve your goal. Leave that completely to a power greater than yourself. All you have to do is know where you're going. The answers will come to you of their own accord and at the right time. Remember these words from the Sermon on the Mount, and remember them well. Keep them constantly before you this month of your test. Ask, and it shall be given you. Seek, and ye shall find. Knock, and it shall be opened unto you. For every one that asketh receiveth, and he that seeketh findeth, and to him that knocketh it shall be opened. It's as marvelous and as simple as that. In fact, it's so simple that in our seemingly complicated world, it's difficult for an adult to understand that all he needs is a purpose and faith. For 30 days, do your very best. If you're a salesman, go at it as you've never done before, not in a hectic fashion, but with the calm, cheerful assurance that time well spent will give you the abundance in return you deserve and want. If you're a homemaker, devote your 30-day test to completely giving of yourself without thinking about receiving anything in return, and you'll be amazed at the difference it makes in your life. No matter what your job, do it as you've never done it before for 30 days. And if you've kept your goal before you every day, you'll wonder and marvel at this new life you've found. Dorothea Brand, the outstanding editor and writer, discovered it for herself and tells about it in her fine book, Wake Up and Live. Her entire philosophy is reduced to the words, act as though it were impossible to fail. She made her own test with sincerity and faith, and her entire life was changed to one of overwhelming success. Now, you make your test for 30 full days. Don't start your test until you've made up your mind to stick with it. You see, by being persistent, you're demonstrating faith. Persistence is simply another word for faith. If you didn't have faith, you'd never persist. If you should fail during your first 30 days, by that I mean suddenly find yourself overwhelmed by negative thoughts, you've got to start over again from that point and go 30 more days. Gradually, your new habit will form until you find yourself one of that wonderful minority to whom virtually nothing is impossible. And don't forget the card. It's vitally important as you begin this new way of living. On one side of the card, write your goal, whatever it may be. On the other side, write the words we've quoted from the Sermon on the Mount. Ask, and it shall be given you. Seek, and ye shall find. Knock, and it shall be opened unto you. Nothing great was ever accomplished without inspiration. See that during these crucial first 30 days, your own inspiration is kept at a peak. And above all, don't worry. Worry brings fear, and fear is crippling. The only thing that can cause you to worry during your test is trying to do it all yourself. Know that all you have to do is hold your goal before you. Everything else will take care of itself. Remember also to keep calm and cheerful. Don't let petty things annoy you and get you off course. Now, since making this test is difficult, some will say, why should I bother? Well, look at the alternative. No one wants to be a failure. No one really wants to be a mediocre individual. No one wants a life constantly filled with worry and fear and frustration. Therefore, remember that you must reap that which you sow. If you sow negative thoughts, your life will be filled with negative things. If you sow positive thoughts, your life will be cheerful, successful, and positive. Now, gradually, you will have a tendency to forget what you've heard on this recording. Play it often. Keep reminding yourself of what you must do to form this new habit. Gather your whole family around at regular intervals and listen to what's been said here. You know, most men will tell you that they want to make money without understanding the law. The only people who make money work in a mint. The rest of us must earn money. This is what causes those who keep looking for something for nothing or a free ride to fail in life. The only way to earn money is by providing people with services or products which are needed and useful. We exchange our time and our product or service for the other man's money. Therefore, the law is that our financial return will be in direct proportion to our service. Now, success is not the result of making money. Making money is the result of success, and success is in direct proportion to our service. Most people have this law backwards. They believe that you're successful if you earn a lot of money. The truth is that you can only earn money after you're successful. It's like the story of the man who sat in front of the stove and said to it, "Give me heat, and then I'll add the wood." How many men and women do you know, or do you suppose there are today, who take the same attitude toward life? There are millions. We've got to put the fuel in before we can expect heat. Likewise, we've got to be of service first before we can expect money. Don't concern yourself with the money. Be of service, build, work, dream, create. Do this, and you'll find there's no limit to the prosperity and abundance that will come to you. Prosperity, is founded upon a law of mutual exchange. Any person who contributes to prosperity must prosper in turn himself. Sometimes the return will not come from those you serve, but it must come to you from someplace, because that's the law. For every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. As you go daily through your 30-day test period, remember that your success will always be measured by the quality and quantity of service you render, and money is a yardstick for measuring this service. No man can get rich himself unless he enriches others. Now, there are no exceptions to a law. You can drive down any street in America and from your car estimate the service that's being rendered by the people living on that street. Had you ever thought of this yardstick before? It's interesting. Some, like ministers and priests and other devoted people, measure their returns in the realm of the spiritual, but again, their returns are equal to their service. Once this law is fully understood, any thinking person can tell his own fortune. If he wants more, he must be of more service to those from whom he receives his return. If he wants less, he has only to reduce his service. This is the price you must pay for what you want. If you believe you can enrich yourself by deluding others, you can end only by deluding yourself. It may take some time, but just as surely as you breathe, you'll get back what you put out. Don't ever make the mistake of thinking you can avert this. It's impossible. The prisons and the streets where the lonely walk are filled with people who tried to make new laws just for themselves. We may avoid the laws of man for a while, but there are greater laws that cannot be broken. An outstanding medical doctor recently pointed out 6 steps that will help you realize success. 1, set yourself a definite goal. 2, quit running yourself down. 3, stop thinking of all the reasons why you cannot be successful and instead think of all the reasons why you can. 4, trace your attitudes back through your childhood and try to discover where you first got the idea you couldn't be successful, if that's the way you've been thinking. 5, change the image you have of yourself by writing out a description of the person you would like to be. And 6, act the part of the successful person you have decided to become. The doctor who wrote those words is a noted West Coast psychiatrist, Dr. David Harold Fink. Do what the experts since the dawn of recorded history have told you must do. Pay the price by becoming the person you want to become. It's not nearly as difficult as living unsuccessfully. Make your 30-day test, then repeat it again, and each time it will become more a part of you until you'll wonder how you could ever have lived any other way. Live this new way, and the floodgates of abundance will open and pour over you more riches than you may have dreamed existed. Money? Yes, lots of it. But what's more important, you'll have peace. You'll be in that wonderful minority who lead calm, cheerful, successful lives. Start today. You have nothing to lose, but you have a whole life to win. This is Earl Nightingale, and thank you.
There we go. What do you think about that, Adam? Any
I think
initial
it's probably the crux of most people's lives, certainly mine, and reminds me a lot of like Law of Attraction, The Secret, Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich.
Yeah.
Many a biblical term and anecdote.
Yeah. Yeah, I bet you he probably read Napoleon Hill, 'cause
Would not be surprised. Many people have read Napoleon Hill.
Yeah.
Whether you want to call him BS or not, Shakespeare is still Shakespeare, even if we don't really know who he was.
Right. I bet
Write all
you,
the plays. If you can't tell, why does it matter?
and I bet you he also read Neville Goddard. Like the one of Neville's books is called "Feeling is the Secret," and he's talking about Strangest Secret. But the concepts are the same. This is one of the things. One of the reasons why I wanted to share this is because it you can draw a thread and connect it to Neville. One of the things that Neville always says many times throughout all of his writings, and just for example, I pulled one up here from "Your Faith is Your Fortune" book that Neville wrote. Just really quickly, he says, "Every man automatically expresses that which he is conscious of being. Without effort or the use of words, at every moment of time, man is commanding himself to be and to possess that which he is conscious of being and possessing." So a little bit more wordy and philosophical sounding, I guess, but essentially the same thing that Mr. Nightingale's talking about. So I love it when, breadcrumbs come together to make a bigger crumb, I guess. And plus, dude's got a really good radio voice. That's it makes me a little jealous. I don't have golden pipes like that, but alas. Just a few things that popped out to me was that his definition of success being a progressive realization of a worthy ideal. I think that is a very good definition to have. And I know we're running up on time here, but one other thing, he mentioned goal setting, right? Setting goals. This can be one of the most challenging aspects of going down adventures such as this, is figuring out exactly what you want, right? It might seem like an easy question, but sometimes when you get to thinking about it, and maybe it's not as easy to put your finger on, right? So there are some an outline called SMART. It's an acronym, SMART, for creating goals, goal setting, and it's specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time bound. So SMART. Those are just some maybe some guideposts to help you in setting and choosing a goal, right? To maybe help you along that way. And then I really like, I know it's a quote from somebody else, but he brought in the act as though it were impossible to fail attitude. And this to me reminds me of Adam Zeeland's reality transurfing. So like going to the mailbox just to get the mail, like it's just any other day. It's going to happen, and you don't have to think twice about it. Don't worry. Yeah. Don't worry
You
about
don't need to know the route, you just need to know the destination.
it. Exactly.
Hey, I need to get to California and I'm going to walk. All right, go west. You'll get there.
Yep. Think in positive terms, we'll get positive results. Think in negative terms, you won't ever get there, right? You're not going to California. All right. So I hope you guys enjoyed hearing from Earl Nightingale. Last thing to mention is the scalar energy session for this week, on Friday, will be overall well-being. And this is a free service that Derek offers to anybody that visits the website. Essentially, go to mysticalwares.com. You'll see a drop-down or a menu option for scalar energy. Click that button. That whole page is dedicated to explaining what exactly scalar energy is, and then there's an option to sign up at the bottom. And like I said, it is completely free, and the frequencies that Derek uses are based off of Royal Raymond Rife's work with scalar energy and frequencies. So this week, like I said, will be overall well-being. So definitely go and sign up for that. Got nothing to lose. And please, please, please share the show, rate the show, help spread the love however you can. And until next time, Chrononauts, Carpe Diem.